Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Too Many Voices podcast. I am your host, John J. Laughlin, and it is April the 11th, 2023, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this podcast. So, technically, this is the first episode. I had posted 3 to 4 episodes prior to this one on YouTube, and, okay, before I get into this, a little information on what's going on in the collective. When I say the collective, the Twin Flame Collective, 144,000 spiritual community, however you want to label it. I do identify as a twin flame, and I had no idea what a twin flame was until I met my first one 4 years ago in California, shortly after my spiritual awakening in 2019. Well, I have yet met another one. It turns out to be a karmic twin flame. Now, that being said, if you're listening to this and on a twin flame journey, you know that the spiritual attacks, the psychic attacks are very, very real. And here lately, myself included, a lot of people in the collective have been getting bombarded with these attacks, especially around the full moons and new moons. And so you really have to be vigilant and protect yourself. And so, that being said, I have a TikTok account. I've been using that platform to help promote this podcast. And, I'd like to say thank you to all of my followers. And it's really been great having that support. And it's been quite a few months since I tried to post another video. I actually tried to post one, I think it was yesterday, the day before yesterday. And for some reason, it didn't go up. Maybe it's because I cussed a little bit. I'm not sure. But it's not on there. Maybe it is. I need to go back and look. And the reason I'm saying that is the episodes of this podcast that I have posted prior to this one just somehow magically disappeared. And I know there's a lot of other content creators, who do content like I do, talking about spirituality, self-love, self-empowerment, etc. And their platforms, their channels have been getting, messed with as well. So just be aware if you are a twin flame and, on a spiritual path like I am, be vigilant, take care of yourself, be aware of who you let into your life. And this is what has happened to me recently. So I met a karmic twin flame, and, some past life stuff had to get balanced out. And so it's been a battle, letting this karmic cycle go. Not really for me, I walked away from it, but the other person, she is holding on tight. So anyway, it is what it is, man. Spiritual warfare. All right, that being said, let's get into it. So this podcast is going to cover a lot of ground. Again, I am a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. So addiction issues will be a primary focus. Spirituality, spiritual awakening, the very spiritual paths one can take in life. If I didn't mention this before, I went through a very intense initial spiritual awakening around New Year's of 2019, which has not stopped. The last 4 years have been pretty incredible, intense life lessons being learned from the universe, from God. And this is what I've gone through again recently. And I think everyone can relate to this, people from your past, or, if you're a twin flame, or high-level soulmate. If you have a soulmate, it's, 99% chance you had a past life with this person. And this is, in my case, right now, some stuff had to get balanced out from a previous incarnation, several, I think. But it's been pretty intense. These people, complete narcissists, there's a whole pack of them. Spell work, you name it. And I'll probably lose a lot of people unless you've experienced this when I mention spell work, but it's very real. So you always want to be vigilant about what you say. People curse themselves every day. I've been guilty of it in the past. And so always think before you speak. Everyone has negative thoughts, but, you need to recognize that, take a step back and breathe and transmute those thoughts into positive thoughts, and don't speak it if it's negative. And, I still deal with it too. It's a daily battle, but it's all about self-awareness and just knowing who you truly are, and your place in the world. You have a right to be here. You have a right to be loved. You have a right to be empowered, and so go within and find your find your own empowerment. For me, what empowers me is martial arts. That is my spiritual path. Well, that meditation, it all goes together. It's all one. But martial arts is something that I have been training in for close to 30 years now, and so that's what keeps me on the straight and narrow. Now, don't get me wrong, I have relapsed, into alcohol and drugs a lot over the past 25 years, 30 years, and so, all right. What else? Okay, I will also be covering occult knowledge, both the light and the dark. After my spiritual awakening, a man by the name of Mark Passio, Markpassio, just miraculously appeared in my YouTube feed shortly after my spiritual awakening. And it's like the old adage says from Hermetic philosophy, the lips of wisdom are sealed except unto those whose ears are ready to hear it. And at that time, I guess, I was ready. And so the last 4 years has really taught me about what my true purpose is on this planet and what I'm supposed to do in this incarnation. This podcast is, a huge part of that. And so anyway, we'll get into all that in later podcasts. That is not the subject of tonight's podcast. But I will also be discussing plant medicines. I was in the cannabis industry for, well over 20 years. I spent the last 10 in California when things went legal. I am no longer in the industry. It's too ego-driven for me. And anyway, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's a very awesome plant medicine. But, it's been bastardized, and there's no sacredness anymore in regard to cannabis. Yes, there are people who treat it as a sacred healing plant, as you should treat all medicinal plants and medicinal fungi and psychedelics. These are medicines to help you heal and, for spiritual growth. And again, I'm guilty of it. I used to chief, 50 bong rips a day, man. So with anything like that, keep it in check. Remember what it's for. And, just be responsible. All right. So tonight's subject is about my alcohol and drug use and abuse, and just putting my story out there. And because I know what a pitfall it can be, man. If you're struggling with addiction issues or drugs and alcohol are concerned, or sex, whatever the case may be, addiction's addiction. So, some addictions are worse than others. That's true. But at the core of it, addiction is all a mind trap, man. And I still got some addictions, I like my Zen nicotine pouches, and, and I occasionally, still puff a little herb every now and then, but that's nothing compared to what I went through, with my battle with alcoholism and, other substances such as cocaine. Bourbon and cocaine go together like coffee and donuts, man. It really does. You know what I'm saying? So if you're in that pit right now, just know that you can get yourself out of it. But it's all up to you, man. I've been in and out of rehabs a lot over the years, probably I think 6, something like that. And rehabs, going to AA and NA, they give you tools, but it won't keep you sober. That's all up to you, man. Your healing is up to you. If it's going to a therapist, find a therapist that has had previous experience with addiction issues personally, because they really get it. It's difficult. Nobody understands alcohol and drug addiction except other alcohol and drug addicts, man. That's just the truth. You can sit there and sympathize and empathize with people all day long, but until you've had their experience for yourself, you just can't relate. And nothing, it's very, very true when it comes to alcohol and drug addiction. and speaking with someone about these issues. But this man on the microphone has had a lot of experience with drug and alcohol, and it's by the grace of God and all my my spirit team that I'm even sitting here live right now. Straight up, you gotta learn to surrender your problems, especially with addiction issues. Surrender any issue you're going through right now. If it's dragging you down, lowering your vibration, you gotta surrender that shit to God, man. There's no other way. And I'm coming from a spiritual perspective, not a religious perspective. So I'm not, speaking of a Christian God or, Islam or anything like that, man. It's just what is. God is just, it's just love, man. But you got to surrender to that. Any issue you're going to. It's like, it's like what Marcus Aurelius, I'm paraphrasing, but basically he said anything outside of your control, you just gotta say fuck it and give it up, man. Just give it up to God. Trust in the universe and let things work out. Now, I'm not saying don't be proactive. You can't just sit on your ass and do nothing. And I'm guilty of that too, man. A lot of people in the spiritual community talk about manifestations and just say your affirmations. That's great to reprogram your subconscious mind. But until you take action to make that manifestation happen in the physical 3D, it's not going to happen. just saying, man. As above, so below. What you do in the 3D affects the 5D. It affects the spiritual realm. And that in turn, your actions here will affect later actions done by the spiritual realm. Just how that works. And we will get into Hermetic philosophy and the 7 cosmic laws, which are immutable, and no one can break those laws. And, which leads me back to the karmic cycles and coming in and out of those over the years. And, before my spiritual awakening, I would call them loops, where people close to me would point it out, like, man, you're in a loop, a loop of the mind. These are karmic cycles. So karmic cycles could be anything. It could be thought patterns, old ways of, just doing things physically. Relationship cycles. Are you in a codependent, toxic ass relationship? And that's what I've, been going through lately. I'm not in a relationship. I asked my karmic twin flame out. She rejected me and chose a karmic because she's karmic. And, I walked away and things completely cracked and crumbled in her life. Now she wants to come back. And no, motherfucker, I'm done with that shit. I'm walking away to bigger and better things, which is, me living my life's purpose. And so I highly suggest, if you're going through such a cycle right now, walk away. That's all you have to do, man. Is walk away, get by yourself, and meditate, go within. The answers will come. And then have the courage to follow your heart on, whatever, the divine is calling you to do. And it's taken me a long time, to even get this podcast up and going. It's been frustrating for me. I first had the idea for this podcast 3 years ago, man. And I bought all the gear and I had a lot of work to do, a lot of shadow work to do. And the shadow work is getting in touch with these unhealed parts of yourselves, your shadow side. For me, it was, extreme isolation. I still struggle with that. I'm an introverted Sigma empath hermit, and I'm breaking free of that. So we all have our, sack of rocks, as my friend Linda says, So you just got to learn how to work through these things one day at a time. And, once you pass through the fear and get through the fear, whatever, fear is an illusion. Unless a tiger is fucking chasing you down trying to eat you, it's an illusion, So just push through the fear, and that was a big one for me, And my fears are weird, man. I guess everybody's are to a degree, some more than others. But for me, it's like, yeah, So I train in 2 martial arts systems. One's Japanese, one's Russian. These are both tried and true ancient battlefield combat system. The Russian system called Sistema, it came from the Cossacks. And my Japanese system is Ninpo Taijutsu. And so this is like samurai ninja combat arts. Very real and very similar, I might add. It's pretty amazing. Like I said, it's all one, man. You know. So, but that being said, I will, going back to fear, like I have no problem, letting a 300-pound Russian who's highly skilled, former Spets soldier, beat the dog shit out of me and love it. But speaking my truth and truly being authentic with the power of my voice, that was a big one to work through. So it's taken me a while to heal and be vulnerable enough and open, open enough to do this podcast. But it's what I'm called to do, and I love it. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're dealing with drug and alcohol issues, like, fuck, man. Well, I'm going to get into it right now. So, my story of addiction throughout my life. So, as with most addictions, it's rooted in, childhood trauma. At least that's where, most of my issues came from. Not to give all the details. I don't want to try. I'm not trying to open up any old wounds, but I guess being a twin, most twin flames are born into karmic families, and I was as well. And then, there's a reason for that, to teach you lessons, to teach you how to empower yourself to break free of generational curses in your family, and do things your own way. My father was a Southern Baptist preacher, an Army drill sergeant back in the 1960s before, Vietnam got hot and heavy, and, a full-on PhD college professor. I'm the only child, you know what I'm saying? And so discipline was very, hardcore. I mean, if you grew up in a Southern Baptist household, it just is, you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with discipline. And honestly, what I see now with the youth, yeah, they probably need to get a smack in the head, Shit. I don't regret any not a single one ass whipping that I got from my mom and dad. Just so I didn't turn out to be like one of these Rainbow Bright, My Little Pony hybrids, running around and just living purely out of their ego, making decisions and think that there are absolutely no consequences. That's called Satanism. But we'll get into that in a later podcast. But drug and alcohol addiction, that is a satanic mindset. That is living out of your ego. It's a very selfish mindset. I mean, shit, man. If I was starting to withdraw from alcohol, I didn't give a fuck about, any other obligations to anyone else except for myself and, like, going to get that bottle of liquor, or that bag of cocaine, or the pills, or whatever the fuck I've done them all, man. I've done all the drugs. You know what I'm saying? Not all of them, thank God I never got into fentanyl and all that shit. But, the difference between fentanyl and alcohol, one just kills you quicker than the other, man. That's it. Drug addiction is a slow, painful death for the most part. It's a slow suicide, and that is what you are doing in drug and alcohol addiction. It is a suicide. First you kill your soul, and then the rest follows. And so it's taken me many years to get my soul back and drag myself out of that pit of fucking hell, and finally give my life over to God and my spirit team. And the ego is it can be fuckery. The ego is there for survival. It's part of who you are, who you think you are. And I went through a full-on ego death. Fuck, I just went through another one. And it cannot be a fun experience. Now, granted, the second time around, it was definitely less intense than the first time, but this second time around really set in stone about who I truly am at my soul's core and what I'm here to do. And, straight up, I'm on a mission from God, man. I like to say in the Blues Brothers. Straight, that completely. We all are. I believe, every human on this planet has a divine life purpose. And unfortunately, parents, teachers, society, environmental programming, subconscious programming, the content you listen to, or, the music, the movies, whatever you're consuming, that forms your ego, your sense of self. And once you wake up and break free of that and look in the mirror, you don't know who the fuck you are. You completely built this false self. of who you think you are. And drug and alcohol addiction will keep you locked in. Drug and alcohol addiction, you don't even know who your false self is. You don't know shit. You're just a shell of a human being, getting high and drunk and, fucking people over and, fucking yourself over, fucking your family over, your friends. And if you don't straighten up and get it together, I mean, you will fucking die. Okay? To be addicted to drugs and alcohol is to die. And that's the hardcore truth, man. This podcast is about truth. And a little, warning, this podcast will be very triggering. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to touch on a lot of shit that's going to make people squirm a little bit. I mean, it makes me squirm a little bit, bringing some of this stuff up. A lot of the content that I consume is all based on, self-empowerment and self-improvement. Well, to empower yourself and improve yourself, you're going to have to slice open some shit. These festering wounds that you never, cauterized and closed off. And that is one huge aspect of the twin flame journey. They call it your mirror soul for a reason. You feel this other person's emotions, their traumas, or bringing out your traumas. But it's all to face yourself and to heal. And I chose to heal, this go round. And even, my first twin flame, I walked away. Because I wasn't ready. I was still drinking, and this woman was, amazing. I mean, I really don't know too much, man. I mean, I know she was a twin flame, is a twin flame, but I had to walk away because I just wasn't going to bring that shit in her life. And it's funny too. There's a huge age difference between my first twin flame and this one. I'm 20 years older than both of these women. But anyway, I had to walk away because I knew I wasn't ready, and you got to be self-aware enough to walk away from certain situations if you're fucked up in some way. It's not fair if you're a drug addict and alcoholic, and you meet somebody wonderful to bring that shit into their life. You will destroy them, and I wasn't about to do that. Yeah, I really took it upon myself. I was like, well, I'm going to destroy myself with this shit. It's just going to be me, man. I just refused to bring that into other people's lives. I did, pretty much inadvertently. I never, nobody means to, you know what I'm saying? Just like my grand plan for my life was not to be a drug addict and alcoholic. When I was in, elementary school, the teacher was like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Drug addict and alcoholic didn't come to mind. I don't know what I said. Probably what most kids are programmed to say. I want to be a doctor or a fucking lawyer. But no. Drug addict and alcoholic did not come to mind, but that's what happened. But looking at things from a higher perspective, I'm grateful for it, man. I'm grateful for all the struggles and pitfalls and bullshit that I went through with my drug and alcohol use and abuse. Because it forced me, okay? It forced me to rip myself down to my core, to my soul, and really face myself and finally just give my life to the Creator. Let God and my spirit team do most of the work. I just need to follow. And unfortunately, going back to ego, that fucker still gets in the way sometimes. But I'm working through it. We are all a work in progress. We are all healing. If somebody tells you that they're healed, they're full of shit, probably. Once you say you're healed, you stop doing the work. And that's where, I'm just saying this from my own experiences. Like, I would go long periods of sobriety. I remember I think I was sober for 2 years. Then it's all of a sudden one day, man, I was like, oh, sure, I'll have one beer. Then, a few days later, I'm up to a 12-pack a day. Because I had that illusion in my mind. I'm healed. I'm good. I can have 1 or 2 beers. No, it never works that way, man. Every time I've relapsed, yeah, like for the first couple of days, it may just be a couple of beers, but then by that third day, I'm pounding 12ers, easy. Then the liquor and the other shit comes out. So, man, that addiction's a slippery slope. I mean, doctors still don't understand it. And people that aren't drug addicts and alcoholics, they look at us like, why don't you just quit? Why are you like this? Like, because that's how our brains are wired, I think most human beings on the planet have an addiction of some sort. You know, whether it's sex, food, drugs, alcohol, watching too much fucking TV, work. You know, it's all devil energy. It really is. Anything that's an obsession of the mind, that is satanic consciousness. You know, I guess I am going to talk about a little bit about Satanism tonight and consciousness in this podcast because it all ties together. You know, with addiction issues, it is satanic consciousness. Like, you have Christ consciousness, to be anointed in the light, living from your heart space. You know, now sometimes you do need to go head above heart, and I think, you know, dealing with other human beings, most definitely. So, okay, the heart tells you one thing, you feel the emotions, you know, and then you need to step back and logically think about said emotions, where they're coming from, what's triggering them. Is it real? Is this person sincere, or are they full of shit? And so forth and so on. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, you know, I started drinking, I guess I was 12 years old. And, you know, I can remember, you know, drinking that first beer. You know, I fucking hated the taste of it. But once the effects set in, it killed all the emotional pain and low self-esteem and all that bullshit. You know, I was in, you know. I mean, of course, you know, where I grew up, I mean, that was the thing to do. And I think that's the case for most kids where they grow up. I mean, especially I grew up in a small town in Virginia. And so that was just the thing to do. And like the town I grew up in is like synonymous with drug use and alcohol use. The town I grew up in is the main hub, or at least it was the main hub for all the cocaine on the East Coast between Miami and Maine. And so it all gets dropped off there. Then there's a back road that hits 95, and bam, you know, Philly, New York, and then all the way up to Maine. So, you know, that's just how I grew up, man. And I don't regret it at all. You know, the people I used to run with, you know, when I was 12, 13, you know, I always hung out with people that were much older than me. You know, when I was 14, I started growing weed and, you know, messing around, you know, running moonshine and shit like that. Yeah, I was hanging out with guys, you know, my age. I'm 44 now, my age or older. So I was a young kid playing with big kids, doing big kid shit, and up in the hills. And I again, I don't regret any of it. I mean, those guys were some serious, most of them were some pretty serious shit kicking rednecks. And so I got a different type of education. And both my parents being college professors, they're retired now, but I decided to, I don't know, school of hard knocks or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it toughened me up in a lot of ways, and you know, made me more aware of like how other things in the world work. Is, you know, dealing with shady people doing outlaw shit. And you know, and like, again, I don't regret any of it because most people live their entire life inside of a box. You know, everything's so black and white to most people. I mean, if you ask most people, you know, who they are, like, you know, what do you do? Who are you? They tell you their occupation. You know, it's like, what's your name? Bob. What do you do? I'm a lawyer. This is what you do for a living, bro. It's not who you are. And that's, you know, that's what I'm trying to point out, you know, in this podcast. I mean, you aren't these false labels you give yourself. And, you know, it's easy for people when they ask me, you know, I can easily say, my name's Josh, or, you know, Josh is my middle name. And, you know, I'm an alcoholic. But that's not what I am anymore. You know, I mean, you're only an alcoholic if you're still drinking. You're only a drug addict if you're still, you know, using. Now you can say, I'm a former alcoholic and drug addict. You know, because whatever you put after I am is what you become. You say that shit enough, it'll manifest, man. And so be very careful about what you say about yourself. You know, and, you know, your subconscious doesn't differentiate between a joke or positive, negative, none of that shit. It just takes it as truth. And so, again, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've cursed myself over the years, all from low self-esteem and low self-worth. And I'm just now getting a sense of that back, I think. It's been a struggle. But it's, you know, daily work, you know, especially if you're struggling with alcohol and drug abuse, any type of addiction, it is daily work. But yeah, you know, I really, started young. I think most alcoholic and drug addicts do. And, my teenage years, I mean, I remember when I was 15, just pounding cases of Budweiser, every weekend. And one of my friends, his father was like, he held the parties, man. He totally got us anything we wanted. And it was just party time at my buddy's dad's. I mean, that was like a daily thing, for a while. And so, depends on the environment you're in, so that's a very important thing. People, places, things. But yeah, I mean, of course, as my alcoholism and drug addiction progressed, the more my life went downhill. I would get sober, things were great, start using again, and media is like instant karma for that shit. And put a lot of people through hell, mostly myself, but my mom and dad, of course, burned a lot of bridges. Not just burn bridges, but straight up like nuclear bomb, carpet bombed bridges with the decisions and actions that I made and took. And unfortunately, a lot of those bridges will never be rebuilt. Because of those decisions that I made. Man. I mean, failed relationships, you name it. So we're going to talk about narcissism for a little bit. Because drug and alcohol addiction can definitely turn you into a narcissist. Because you kind of just look at your addiction as the center of the world, and that's, again, a very selfish mindset. That's all you're worried about is yourself and the substances that you're putting in your body. So, just be mindful, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Be very aware, okay, so narcissism. Oh, man. Sorry, give me a minute. This is bringing up a lot of stuff I haven't talked about in a while. So, this previous experience I had with this karmic twin flame, she's extremely narcissistic. My ex-wife was extremely narcissistic. And I was sober. I'd been sober for 2 years when I got married. And this was like 15 years ago now. And just totally... the relationship was over after the first month. And, we put... I guess I held on to it. For 2 toxic years, and I was sober, and she told me if I ever drank, she would leave, and I was like, okay, great. And so I started drinking to push her away, even though she stayed. And here's what I realized: if you're an empath like I am, and you're in a relationship with a narcissist, they won't leave. You have to leave. They will sit there and watch you fucking destroy yourself, not give a fuck. And what I'm saying is, your relationships are very important if you're an alcoholic and a drug addict. The wrong relationship, it will send you on a downward spiral that if you're lucky, you'll pour yourself out of it and make it out alive. Especially if you go back into the drugs and the alcohol, is what I'm discussing. So you got to be very vigilant with your relationships and, learning how to set strong boundaries. And that is something that I've had to learn and teach myself and train myself to do over the years. And it's easy to set your boundaries too strong. I mean, I kind of do that now where I just shut everybody out, fucked up a lot of opportunities because I just was so distrusting of people. But that goes back to the people I ran around with and allowing myself to be a doormat for narcissists and things of that nature. But it seems like, at least in my life and my experience, I don't know, man. Yeah, the empath-narcissist dynamic, that's always a thing because as an empath, you attract these people because they need healing because, they're wounded just like I am, but just in a different way. Don't get me wrong, we all have narcissistic tendencies. Not everybody wants to take accountability for certain actions. I definitely fell into that. But I know for myself, I've always been pretty straight up and a man about, paying my upcomings. If I fucked up and knew I fucked up, I'd admit it. You know what I'm saying? There's no point beating around the bush. If you know you're guilty, it's like, fuck it, fess up to it and, go from there. But narcissists can't do that. They can't take accountability for their actions. You know, like a narcissistic alcoholic will probably blame you, of course, for their alcohol. You're the reason I drink. Well, no. You know, it's your own bullshit. So, but anyway, the whole point of that is just going back to what I've been dealing with lately, and you know how important your relationships are, whether it's friendships, intimate relationships. I mean, these things can send you on a downward spiral. You know, I've had plenty of like so-called friends. This is when I was sober, and like they knew I had an issue with alcohol, but then like turn around and offer me a beer. You know what I'm saying? Just to try to like slip you up because they're fucked up. And you know, people are haters, man. I mean, not all, not saying all, but there's a lot of haters out there that will come at you if they know your weaknesses. You know, they go from hater to predator, you know, and will just try to slip you up, you know, just to throw you off your path. And so just be very vigilant about who you have in your life. And if you have, especially again, if you have these issues with alcohol and drugs, I mean, I wouldn't tell anybody that you first meet. You know what I'm saying? Keep that shit to yourself. And that's something I've had to learn too is, you know, don't speak too much about yourself. Don't tell anybody your plans. Just, you know, be and do. Just act on it. Don't say shit. And, you know, I was very naive, you know, growing up. I don't know. I'm a true empathic, you know, what do you call it? What's that personality type? Advocate. You know, I want to see everybody do well in life and succeed. And it's all, but that's not 99% of the planet. You know, most people, they'll, you know, smile in your face and turn right around and fuck you over. You know, just because you're trying to do well and make a difference in the world. And I think this is something that most people deal with if you're just a true, genuine, compassionate, kind person. You know, you will experience this. So, I don't know. Just saying, I think I've kind of digressed a little bit off the subject of alcohol and drugs, but it all ties in together because, you know, if you let yourself get walked over like a doormat and you let people treat you like shit, then it's easy just to pick up a bottle of booze or pop some pills and just dwell in that. And it actually got to a point for me, you know, towards the end of my alcohol use, which actually wasn't too long ago. Like it's like after my spiritual awakening, like you know, your paradigm gets ripped apart. Everything gets ripped apart in your life so you can rebuild it from the ground up. And that's kind of what happened recently. I mean, I didn't like relapse or anything, but I'm in the stages of rebuilding my life and really stepping into my true purpose. But again, it's easy to just fall into that pit and you know, drink and use drugs to like kill whatever emotional pain that's either caused by your own internal shit, which it is at its core, not standing up for yourself or somebody else's influence. Again, going back to setting those healthy boundaries. Man, I feel like I'm bouncing around all over the place. It's a difficult thing for me to talk about still for some reason. Anyway, bear with me. But what I was saying before, towards the end of my alcohol use, the alcohol didn't even work anymore for me. You know, when I would relapse after my spiritual awakening, like, it's like I was buzzed, but I couldn't get drunk anymore. It's like, you know, God was like, no, you know, you can't fade out anymore. We're not going to let you. You got to face your shit and heal. And that really is the big lesson. If you are struggling with addiction issues, you need to heal internally. There is, you know, and being on the spiritual path, yes, there are dark entities that will attach themselves to you. Okay, that it's truth. Okay, the people you hang around, if you're hanging around some dark motherfuckers, and you know, in their energetic field, they will attach themselves to you, and so you got to separate yourself and cleanse your energy, you know, on a daily basis, especially in intimate relationships. Like, you know, one tarot reader that I follow, she's a, you know, African American woman down in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And one of her readers was like, you got to watch out for that voodoo pussy or that hoodoo dick. You know, she's right. I mean, straight up, man. Sexual intimacy with the wrong person will snatch your fucking soul, man. you know. And that's what I went through with my ex-wife. I mean, like, narcissists love to use that sex, to trap you. And so, but, like I was saying, man, the alcohol just didn't work anymore to kill the pain from such situations. And, they call alcohol, liquor, spirits for a reason. I'm sure most of you have heard this that are listening. It does, man. Like, hardcore alcohol use, it opens up a portal to really dark shit. Straight up. Like, why alcohol is even legal, I can't, get it through my mind. For me personally, not just because I'm a recovering alcoholic, a former alcoholic, but because it's the most lethal, it's the most dangerous drug on the planet. And it's available on every street corner. And there's a reason for that. I mean, you can take one shot of bourbon and immediately you'll feel dulled down. You'll feel warm and good, but you're definitely dulled down. You're not running at 100% mental capacity, and it makes people easier to subjugate and to control. And that's with any, hardcore drug use. I mean, pimps. Back, probably still do it. I mean, used to give their hoes fucking heroin to keep them locked in and subdued. It's easy. I mean, it's all about controlling the mind. And so, I mean, think about it. With alcoholism, especially the pharmaceutical industry now, you got widespread mind control used through drugs. They've been working on this for quite some time. It's a very real thing. They know what they're doing. So, I mean, these are the things you need to be aware of, struggling with drugs and alcohol, and what's at really the core of it. It's your mind, it's your consciousness that you yourself are attacking or allowing other people to attack for you, and, struggling with an alcohol and drug addiction will keep you locked in to that mindset without you even realizing it. Like, I'm allowing myself to be controlled and giving my power away. Yeah. It's taken me a while to be self-aware of that too, but that's the truth. It really is. I mean, alcohol and drug addiction, you're just giving your power away to the liquor companies or giving your power away to the drug dealer on the corner, and as well as your money. So, you gotta learn how to take your power back. And which is a big focus of this podcast as well, is self-empowerment, taking your power back from people that took it from you, and drawing that line in the sand. Drawing a line with yourself in the sand. Okay, I'm not going to take shit from myself anymore. You know what I'm saying? So we're all our own worst enemy. That's a fact. But again, to make wise decisions, you need to be self-aware and what decisions you're making. So, is there anything else I can say on this subject? Probably a lot. I'm just, I'm kind of babbling right now because I'm thinking in my mind, like, just all the insanity that I went through in the depths of alcoholism. Especially alcohol, like the cocaine, the pills, that came, the drinking was the catalyst for all that shit. If I downed, 2 or 3 shots of bourbon, it was immediately, let's get an 8-ball of Coke. Like I said in the beginning of this podcast, cocaine and bourbon go together like coffee and donuts. They just do. So, oh man. Yeah, it's tough. If you're struggling right now, believe me, I feel your pain. Definitely get some help. And find somebody that you can talk to about this. AA is great. AA has been great for me in the past. I still talk to my sponsors, and I met a lot of really good people through AA for sure. But be choosy. With your AA groups for sure. Find yourself a home group with like-minded individuals, and stay away from the groups that tend to attract people that just use AA as like a psychiatrist office. It's not what it's for, man. You're in there to talk about, alcohol and drug addiction and how to stay sober. Not, I don't know, your wife left you and the kids and you felt like drinking. And I get it. Okay. We get it. But most people, I mean, the whole point of AA is to like go in there, yeah, tell some of your story, but then like, what do you do to stay sober? What are you doing to better yourself and empower yourself? So just be aware of that, and find something, definitely find something physical to do that will help take place of your addiction. For me, it was martial arts. Although I went to plenty of martial arts classes, shit faced, many times. And got my ass kicked a few times for doing so by my instructors. So, oh man. The stories go on. That's what I'm saying. This podcast may end up dragging out as, the recesses of my mind open up and, oh yeah, remember when this happened and you did this dumb shit. So, I got stories, man. And most of them weren't good, That's why I've been called to do this podcast. I'm here to put out the good and the bad and the ugly about my life, and hopefully listening to the good and the bad and the ugly, it'll help other people that are listening to take control of their lives and empower themselves. We'll see where it goes. I got my hopes up. I'm optimistic. Oh man. And if you are, there's a great podcast by a guy named Shane Raymer. It's called That Sober Guy. I actually was in correspondence with Shane a few times when I lived in California. He's out of Vacaville. And great podcast. He really hones in there and, really gets down to the core of addiction. And it's interesting. So here's one of the stories of how insane addiction can be. So when I first had the idea for this podcast 3 years ago, right after my spiritual awakening, and just, I don't know, man, I had no idea where I was going with my life really at the time. I mean, amazing things were happening on a spiritual level. And, so I get this podcast gear, and, I still am a big fan of Shane's, listening to his podcast, and I was like, all right, man, yeah, I'm going to fucking do this, and, I'm definitely going to hone in on addiction issues, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's what happened. I sit down one night to do this podcast and start, and I get this idea in my head. It's like, you know what? I bet you I could get a lot of work done and burn that midnight oil if I just had a big old bag of what? Cocaine. So that's what happened. All right. Here I am doing a fucking podcast that deals with, drug and alcohol addiction issues, and I end up getting a 1/4 ounce of blow, which is a lot. And pretty much it ended up being 4 or 5 days with no sleep, peeping out the windows and pounding booze. Yeah. And so I reached out to Shane and told him what happened. And he mentioned it in one of his podcasts. He didn't mention me by name, but he mentioned the situation, because that's the insanity of drug and alcohol addiction. That, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody in their right mind would make that decision who wasn't like wired that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody's thinking would be that fucking irrational, in a lot of situations. Like, okay, and the hypocrisy of it all too, which I didn't even really think about that at the time at all, man. This is really hypocritical. No, that didn't cross my mind. I mean, I fell into the illusion of, oh shit, if I got all this cocaine, I can just bang this podcast out. Nope. Fuck. Oh man, that's the insanity. It really is. Addiction. I mean, the definition of addiction, it just should be insanity. And it really is, because you're doing the same fucking thing that hurts you, okay, on a daily basis, over and over and over and over again until it does kill you. Or you finally just look in the mirror one day and like, all right, motherfucker, I'm tired of this shit. Let's make a change. Oh, man. I might stop here. Fuck. What else? What other crazy war stories do I have? Man, you name it, man. Fucking failed relationships. I already mentioned that. Flipping, running my truck through a fence doing 70 on a back road in North Carolina one night, rolling my truck, I think 3 times. I had well, I walked away with like a little bit of scratch above my left eye. That was it. My truck was completely crushed. Thank my guardian angels for that one. Like, seriously. But yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to rehash all the war stories. That doesn't do anybody any good. Some of them I can laugh on. I can laugh about it now, but none of that shit is really funny, man. You tell a normal person, I mean, they're like, man, you're fucking crazy. You get into a rehab with a bunch of other drug addicts and start telling war stories. I mean, you're out there just laughing your ass off, like, oh yeah, I get it. Shit. So anyway, man, no, it's not funny. I try to go use a little bit of levity in most situations, and it does help. It really does. But you can joke about it, but then when you sit down and really think about like the incident that happened, and just, I mean, there's not too many things that I went through where I was like drunk or under the influence of some other substance. It does not send shivers up my spine. Like, holy fuck! I mean, how am I not in prison? For 20 years. And that's just not from the drug and alcohol. It's just some of the just crazy shit that I was involved in. So that goes back to lack of self-awareness. It really is, man. I mean, if you're a drug and alcohol addict, I mean, you have no self-awareness. I mean, you do to a degree. Like, what you're doing is fucked up, and you're fucking your life up and other people's lives if you're involved with anybody. For me, I was the hermit drunk. I mean, I hated going to bars. Even when I wasn't drinking heavy, can't stand bars. Never did. Never liked them. I could just sit at home by myself and do that and just build my own fucked up world. That's what I did for 20 years. Yeah. Oh man. All right. I think I might end it there. Yeah. I mean, if you're struggling, just give yourself that self-love, man, that you never gave yourself. And that's what, going back to this situation, I think most situations, bad situations that people find themselves in, personal situations, it's a lack of self-love, a lack of self-awareness, a lack of self-esteem, self-worth. And these are why people, including myself, I've gotten myself involved in toxic relationships in the past, because you're like codependent. Somebody else to validate you and give you that love you never got from your parents or whatever the fuck. But none of that shit matters, man. The only thing that matters is like how you see yourself. Can you look in the mirror and tell yourself, truly, like from the heart, like, do you love yourself? And that's what it boils down to, man. And like, thank God I'm in a position now, personally, I don't need anybody, bro. I'm good. I'm whole and complete inside. And breaking out of these fucking karmic cycles that have plagued me most of my life. I'm breaking free of that shit on a daily basis because I don't want it anymore. I'm a different person now. But it took, 20 years of going through absolute hell several times over to get to this point and fucking working on myself and pretty much cutting every single motherfucker off out of my life who did not have my best interest at heart. I don't give 2 fucks about being alone. The only thing I care about is my walk with God and what I'm here to do in this incarnation. That's it. And if any person, environment, comes along and tries to throw me off that path, they get 86 real fucking quick. Now, you know what I'm saying? My boundaries, I'm like Conan the Barbarian with a fucking broadsword, man. I cut that shit off right then and there, nip it in the fucking bud. And if the other person, they got, they're in their feelings about it, fuck their feelings. You come first. Your health, your, physical, mental, and spiritual well-being are the only 3 things you should really give a shit about, man. That's the only 3 things you should give a fuck about. And if anybody tries to step on one of those, cut them out. Seriously. No ifs, ands, buts, what have yous. Tell them to fuck off and go build your beautiful life. That's what I've had to do, brutally with some people. Most people just can't take no. Fuck those people. So just telling you straight up, that's how you gotta be. Be assertive at first, be kind and compassionate. Don't be nice. Be kind and compassionate. Unfortunately, most people take kindness and compassion as a fucking weakness, and that's when you gotta put them in their place and let out, a little bit of that shadow side on their ass. You know what I mean? But I'm just speaking my truth and from my experiences. This is what I've had to fucking deal with, man. Especially being a very high level sensitive empath. You have to, if you're an empath, like a true empath, you have to learn to set boundaries. And if you're an empath with drug and alcohol issues, you gotta learn how to set really strong, strict boundaries. Because you let a motherfucker walk over those boundaries and walk over you, bro, you're gonna be in that bottle or that bag of blow, or whatever the fuck it is, popping pills very, very quickly. Because all that person's gonna do is rip open all the old emotional wounds of the same fucking situation, living it over. And what is that same situation over and over? A karmic cycle. Insanity is what it is. I know, I lived this shit for years. I don't anymore, though. Fuck that shit. Breaking free, moving on. You have to. Moving forward. That's the only thing you can do in life. You can stay stuck if you choose to be. It's a choice. You can choose to stay stuck in your drug and alcohol addiction. You can choose to stay stuck with some toxic ass motherfucker that's destroying your life and your relationship. Or you can choose to take your power back, beat your addictions, and move forward and create a beautiful life. It's all up to you. So I think that's the message for tonight's podcast. It's all up to you. Empower yourself. And thanks for listening. And I will let everyone know when the next episode is up. All right, everybody. Keep loving yourselves. And that's the most important thing. Self-love, self-care. If you're not doing anything physical, then I highly suggest you do something physical. If you're on a spiritual path, whatever the case may be, man. You want to do yoga, do fucking yoga. Do martial arts, whatever it is that appeals to you. Just anything to make your life more positive, and that gives you self-empowerment. Because the more fully awakened, self-empowered individuals we have on this planet, the better off we're going to fucking be. I mean, if everybody really knew that they're a sovereign divine being, law enforcement's job would be a hell of a lot easier. I'll tell you that. All right. I'm going to leave it at that. Love you guys. Thanks for listening. All right. Good night.